The air inside the restaurant kitchen was thick with the scent of butter, garlic, and simmering sauces. Pans sizzled, knives clashed against cutting boards, and the rhythmic shouts of orders being called out filled the space. It was the kind of controlled chaos that only the best chefs could master. And he had mastered it. The chef wiped the sweat from his brow, plating the final dish with the kind of precision that had earned this restaurant its elite reputation. He had spent years in this kitchen, pouring his soul into every dish, creating flavors that made diners close their eyes in bliss. But tonight, something was different. The doors to the kitchen swung open with force, and the owner stormed in, his face twisted with a smug expression. The entire kitchen fell silent. Even the flames beneath the stove seemed to dim. "Take off your apron," the owner said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. A slow, stunned silence followed. The chef barely moved. He felt the weight of 100 eyes on him, some confused, some expectant, some avoiding his gaze altogether. "Excuse me?" His voice was steady, but inside, his heart pounded. "You heard me." The owner folded his arms, leaning against the counter like he had all the power in the world. "You're done here. You're fired." The kitchen staff exchanged nervous glances, but no one dared to speak. They had seen it before, how people disappeared from this restaurant without warning. But not him. Never him. The chef straightened, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. "Why?" The owner scoffed. "Let's call it restructuring. We're moving in a different direction. You don't fit anymore." A dull ache spread through his chest, but he refused to show weakness. He had given this restaurant everything. He had stayed late, arrived early, bled and burned for the sake of perfection. And now, he was being discarded like an old, useless pan. A slow, heavy breath left his lips. "So that's how it is?" "That's how it is." The owner smirked. "Don't make a scene. Just take off the apron and walk out." The chef looked around at his team, people he had trained, people who had once looked up to him. Some turned away, pretending to be busy. Others stared at him with wide, helpless eyes. No one spoke. No one defended him. For a moment, he considered fighting back, demanding an explanation. But then, something inside him shifted. There was no use arguing. The decision had already been made. Slowly, deliberately, he reached behind his neck, untying the strings of his apron. The fabric slid off his shoulders, heavy with the weight of years of dedication. He folded it neatly, placing it on the counter beside him. Then, he turned to the owner and smiled. A slow, knowing smile. 6 months, he said softly, his voice carrying a promise. The owner frowned. "What?" "6 months," the chef repeated. "That's all I need." A flicker of unease crossed the owner's face, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by the same smug arrogance. "Whatever helps you sleep at night." The chef didn't reply. He simply turned and walked toward the exit, each step slow and deliberate. The kitchen door swung shut behind him. And just like that, he was gone. But the story was far from over. Because in 6 months, he would return. And when he did, they would never forget his name. The restaurant's owner sat in his office, his face tense as he scrolled through the latest financial reports. Something was wrong. Just 6 months ago, his restaurant had been a hotspot for the wealthy and powerful. A place where people booked tables weeks in advance just to experience the luxury. But now, things were different. Too different. The numbers weren't adding up. Reservations had dropped. Walk-ins were fewer. Even regular customers, the ones who never dined anywhere else, had vanished. He had ignored the signs at first, dismissing the decline as a temporary slump. But now, there was no denying it. Something was pulling his customers away. And he had a feeling he knew exactly what it was. Across the street, a new restaurant had appeared overnight. It was the kind of place that shouldn't have mattered. A simple, understated name. No over-the-top marketing. No fancy celebrity endorsements. Yet, somehow, it was making waves. The whispers had started slow. Have you tried it? I heard the food is out of this world. I don't know who the chef is, but it's something else. At first, the owner had laughed it off. Every new place had its moment. Customers would always return to the real thing, the restaurant that had built its name on exclusivity and prestige. But as days turned into weeks, it became clear that this wasn't a passing trend. People weren't just trying the new place. They were leaving and never coming back. A new rival in town. The owner stepped outside and watched from across the street. The new restaurant had no flashy signs, no extravagant decorations. And yet, the line stretched down the block. It didn't make sense. How? Who was behind this? He sent one of his managers to investigate, but when the man returned, he had little to report. They're different, the manager said hesitantly. The food is good. Like, really good. But it's not just the food. It's the way they run things. What do you mean? The owner snapped. The manager hesitated. They treat people like family. Customers, staff, everyone. The atmosphere feels warm. Like they actually care. The owner scoffed. Care? That was a fool's game. Restaurants weren't built on feelings. They were built on power, reputation, and control. But his anger only deepened and the manager handed him a copy of the menu. The owner's eyes narrowed as he scanned the dishes. Some of them were shockingly familiar. He clenched his jaw. Someone was playing a dangerous game. And he had a sickening feeling he knew exactly who it was. The mystery chef whispers had started spreading through the city. Who's the chef? The new restaurant had built its entire brand around anonymity. No interviews, no social media posts. The owner was unknown, and the chef? Even more of a mystery. It was infuriating. The owner tried digging deeper. He called suppliers, bribed food critics, even sent spies disguised as customers. But no one could get a name. The only thing anyone knew was that the kitchen was locked down like a fortress. No one outside the staff was allowed inside. No one saw the chef. It was as if this man had stepped out of nowhere. But the owner knew better. This wasn't just some random new competitor. This was revenge. And there was only one man who had a reason to destroy him. The same man he had fired 6 months ago. The first blow that night, as the owner tried to sleep, his mind raced with memories of that day. The humiliation. The quiet, steady voice of the black chef. 6 months from now, you'll regret this. The words echoed in his head like a curse. But he wasn't going to let some ex-employee ruin him. This was his city. His restaurant empire. He would crush this so-called mystery chef before he got any stronger. But before he could make his move, an anonymous message arrived at his restaurant's front desk. A single sentence, typed in perfect simplicity. Come dine with us. You'll want to see this yourself. The owner stared at the note, his heart pounding. Someone was challenging him. Daring him to walk into enemy territory. And something inside him whispered. He was about to regret it. The underground kitchen was nothing fancy, just a few hot plates, an old oven, and a handful of second-hand utensils. But for the chef, it was more than enough. It was a battleground. With every dish he plated, he was sending a message. At first, he cooked for himself, testing recipes, refining flavors, perfecting every detail. But word spread faster than he expected. It started with a friend who had been fired from the same restaurant. He tasted the food and couldn't believe it. "This is better than anything they serve over there," he muttered. "You should be charging people for this." The chef smirked. He already knew that. Then came the first customer. A man in a worn-out jacket, hungry, desperate. He had heard about a chef who was cooking from a secret location and wanted to try it. The chef gave him a plate, no charge. The man took a bite and froze. His eyes widened. This is incredible." He left that night, but the next day, he returned, with 5 more people. Within a week, dozens of people were showing up. Some homeless, some workers, some just curious. The chef didn't turn anyone away. He cooked for them all. And then, the real change happened. One night, a well-dressed man walked in. He wasn't like the others, he looked out of place. He sat down, watching everything carefully before finally ordering. The chef served him a plate. The man took a bite. Then another. Then another. He didn't speak until the plate was completely empty. Then, he leaned forward and said, "I've eaten at every 5-star restaurant in the city. None of them compare to this." The chef said nothing. He just wiped his hands and kept cooking. The man smiled. "I run a high-end catering service. I want to invest in whatever you're doing." The chef finally looked up. He wasn't interested in investors. He wasn't interested in business deals. He had only one goal: to prove them wrong. Meanwhile, across town, the old restaurant was thriving. Or at least, it seemed that way on the surface. But inside the kitchen, things were falling apart. Dishes weren't consistent. Customers were complaining about bland flavors. The new head chef was scrambling to maintain the quality, but no matter what he tried, it wasn't enough. Because they weren't using the real recipes. They were using stolen ones. And a stolen recipe is just a list of ingredients without the hands of the master behind it. The owner was starting to notice. "What's happening here?" he barked at his staff. "Why are we getting complaints? Where is the passion? The fire? The magic?" But no one could answer. That's when he heard the rumors. Whispers of a chef, cooking in secret. A mystery man serving food so good, people were willing to travel across town just to get a taste. At first, he didn't believe it. But when a VIP customer canceled their reservation, saying they had already eaten the best meal of their life elsewhere, his blood ran cold. He had to find out the truth. Back in the underground kitchen, the chef was calm. He knew what was coming. He wasn't just cooking anymore. He was starting a war. The restaurant was buzzing with energy. Tonight was meant to be their grand comeback, a lavish event with high-profile guests, food critics, and social media influencers. The owner had pulled every string, determined to restore the restaurant's former glory. Tables were set with gleaming silverware, crystal wine glasses reflected the soft glow of golden chandeliers, and servers moved swiftly, carrying trays of artfully plated dishes. Cameras flashed as guests posed, laughter filling the air. At the center of it all, the owner stood with a proud smile, shaking hands with business elites and media personalities. This was his moment to prove that his restaurant was still the pinnacle of fine dining. But something felt off. It started with whispers at one of the tables. A woman took a bite of her dish and frowned. She leaned toward her partner. This tastes familiar." Across the room, a food critic paused mid-bite, his eyes narrowing. He glanced around as if searching for confirmation. Then another guest. And another. Soft murmurs spread like wildfire. The restaurant's top chef, the one hired to replace the fired black chef, stood frozen behind the open kitchen window, his face pale. He wiped his forehead, looking toward the owner in desperation. The owner finally noticed the shift in atmosphere. He excused himself from his conversation and strode toward the nearest table. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his voice a touch too sharp. The guest, a well-known critic, set down his fork. "This dish," he said slowly, "tastes exactly like something I had at an underground dining event recently." The owner stiffened. "That's impossible." The critic ignored him, turning to another table. "You've been there too, haven't you?" A few nods. A few murmurs of agreement. The tension grew thicker. And then, the restaurant doors opened. The chatter died instantly. People turned, some craning their necks to see. A figure stepped inside, dressed in sharp but simple attire, exuding confidence without effort. It was him. The black chef they had discarded. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The servers stopped moving, the guests held their breath, and the owner's face drained of color. He walked forward, slow, deliberate. He wasn't just a guest tonight. He was something else. A storm rolling in. The owner finally found his voice. What are you doing here?" The chef smiled. It wasn't smug. It wasn't angry. It was the kind of smile that sent a message, "I told you so." "I heard there was a big event tonight," he said, looking around as if admiring the decor. "Thought I'd see for myself how things have been going." The owner recovered quickly, puffing up his chest. "I don't know what you're trying to pull, but you need to leave." A chuckle from the crowd. Someone whispered, "He doesn't need to be here. His food already is." The owner clenched his jaw. "Enough of this nonsense. The food is made by my new chef." "Is it?" The fired chef tilted his head, glancing toward the kitchen. "Then why does it taste exactly like mine?" Silence. The new chef inside the kitchen swallowed hard, gripping the counter. He looked terrified. The fired chef turned back to the guests. "I wonder, how is it that my recipes, my flavors, ended up in a place that told me I wasn't a good fit?" A ripple of realization swept through the crowd. A few guests set down their utensils, disgusted. Others picked up their phones, already tweeting about the unfolding drama. The owner's face was red, veins bulging. "Get out." But the chef wasn't done. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. He placed it on the nearest table. One word. Invitation. People leaned in, curious. His voice was calm but carried power. "For those who want to taste the real thing, the way it was meant to be, come find me." The murmurs turned into excitement. The guests who had already dined at his underground restaurant exchanged knowing looks. The owner watched, horror dawning in his eyes. He wasn't just losing a moment. He was losing everything. And the fired chef? He walked out just as calmly as he had walked in, leaving behind a stunned, broken empire. This was only the beginning. The owner sat in his office, gripping the edge of his desk as he scrolled through his restaurant's financial reports. Another terrible week. His once thriving empire was crumbling before his eyes. He had tried everything, offering discounts, changing the menu, even hiring new staff, but nothing worked. Customers weren't just leaving his restaurant. They were choosing the other place. The black chef's restaurant. The owner clenched his jaw, his mind racing. How? How was this happening? He had built his business on prestige, exclusivity, and high-class service. No one should have been able to compete with that. And yet, the chef he had fired in humiliation 6 months ago had somehow returned to haunt him. The owner slammed his fist against the desk. Enough was enough. If the black chef thought he could just take over, he was sorely mistaken. It was time to fight back. The silent war begins. The owner wasted no time. If he couldn't beat the black chef in quality, he'd destroy him in other ways. Step 1: Bad press. He hired a PR team to start spreading rumors. Fake news articles popped up online. Is the city's hottest new restaurant hiding health violations? Customers complain of rude service and food poisoning. Is the hype overblown? He even bribed local influencers to start trashing the Black Chef's restaurant on social media. Step 2: Financial sabotage. He called up suppliers, demanding they cut ties with the rival restaurant. You work with them, you lose my business. Some suppliers, eager to stay in the owner's good graces, agreed. Within a week, shipments to the Black Chef's restaurant mysteriously slowed down. And then came step 3: legal threats. The owner called his lawyers. Find something. Anything. I want a lawsuit on his desk by the end of the week. His lawyers got to work, looking for ways to accuse the Black Chef of stealing recipes, violating contracts, or breaking industry rules. The owner leaned back in his chair, smirking. Let's see how long he lasts now. The chef fights back at first. The Black Chef's restaurant felt the pressure. Customers whispered about the negative press. Reservations slowed. Staff members grew anxious. And when suppliers cut ties, things became even worse. But the chef? He didn't panic. Instead, he made one phone call. And within days, everything changed. New suppliers arrived, better ones. The media started exposing the fake articles. Influencers who had once criticized the restaurant suddenly reversed their opinions. And worst of all for the owner? His own customers started speaking out. That restaurant is amazing. I don't believe the lies. The only thing shady is how desperate his competitor is. I used to eat at the old restaurant, but after seeing this? Never again. The owner's plan was backfiring. Instead of destroying the Black Chef's reputation, he was strengthening it. The owner's desperation grows. The owner refused to admit defeat. With bad press failing, he took things further. He bribed a health inspector to visit the Black Chef's restaurant, unannounced. The inspector stormed into the kitchen, searching for violations. The chef watched calmly as the inspector checked every corner. But when the inspection was over, the restaurant passed with flying colors. Not only that, but the inspector was so impressed that he wrote a glowing review online. The owner's rage boiled over. How? How does he keep winning? Nothing was working. Nothing. And then, one day, an invitation arrived at his doorstep. A simple, elegant card. With a message written in bold letters, "Come dine with us. You'll want to see this yourself." The owner's stomach twisted. Was this a trap? A challenge? A warning? He didn't know. But one thing was clear. The Black Chef wasn't done with him yet. The chef had been waiting for this moment. For 6 months, he had worked in the shadows, building something stronger, something untouchable. Now, it was time to step into the light. The invitation-only dinner was his final move, a carefully laid trap. He sent out exclusive invitations, but not under his own name. Instead, the event was branded as an elite, private dining experience hosted by a mystery chef. Only the wealthiest, most influential food critics, business moguls, and VIP guests in the city received an invite. The buzz spread like wildfire. Who is this chef? Why is it so secretive? Why are only select people invited? Curiosity became obsession. The former restaurant owner heard the whispers too. And he couldn't ignore them. His restaurant had suffered massive losses over the past few months. Customers were dwindling, profits were dropping, and even his most loyal patrons were starting to look elsewhere. The underground chef was winning. And the owner had a sickening suspicion that he already knew who was behind it all. So when an anonymous invitation landed on his desk, his hands trembled as he opened it. One line stood out in bold: "A dining experience unlike anything you've ever had before." His gut twisted. It had to be him. And so, that night, he walked straight into the trap. The venue was stunning. A luxurious hall, dimly lit with golden chandeliers. Tables were draped in pristine white, and soft classical music hummed in the background. Guests were already seated, dressed in their finest. Laughter, conversation, anticipation, it filled the air like electricity. The owner, now just another guest in the crowd, took a seat at the back, scanning the room. He spotted familiar faces: critics, celebrities, investors. These were the people he had always wanted in his own restaurant. And yet, here they were, at someone else's table. The food arrived. Plate after plate, each dish a masterpiece. A symphony of flavors. People took one bite and went silent. Mouths parted. Eyes widened. Some closed their eyes as if in a trance. The critics whispered among themselves. This is beyond 5-star. This is art." The owner took a hesitant bite. And in that moment, he knew. This was his chef. The very man he had insulted, humiliated, discarded like trash. Now, he was the king of the table. The room suddenly hushed. A figure stepped forward. Dressed in black, apron tied around his waist. The mystery chef. Gasps rippled across the room as he finally lifted his head. The owner froze. It was him. The whispers grew louder. The guests were realizing the same thing. The famous chef who had been fired from a high-end restaurant had built something bigger, something unstoppable. The owner's face turned pale. This wasn't just a dinner. This was his downfall. The chef looked around the room, his voice calm and steady. "Some of you knew me before. Some of you didn't. But tonight, I want you to know one thing. I didn't come back for revenge." The room hung on his every word. "I came back to prove a point. That no matter how many times you try to break someone, if they refuse to stay down, they will rise again." The owner gripped the tablecloth, his knuckles white. This was it. The chef was about to take everything. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. The underground dining experience had grown beyond anything he imagined. It was no longer just a secret restaurant, it had become a movement. A symbol. High-end guests, celebrities, and even top food critics raved about it. The exclusivity, the flavors, the storytelling behind each dish, it was all part of an experience that money alone couldn't buy. And the one who had once been tossed aside was now at the top of the culinary world. But then, something unexpected happened. One evening, just as service was ending, a visitor arrived. It wasn't a guest. It wasn't a critic. It was him. The owner of the restaurant that had fired him. The same man who had humiliated him, belittled him, discarded him like he was nothing. Now, that man stood in the entrance of the underground restaurant, shoulders hunched, face pale. He looked smaller. Not the arrogant figure who had once ruled over the kitchen like a king. The room fell silent. The chef wiped his hands and stepped forward, his expression unreadable. The owner licked his dry lips. He glanced around, taking in the luxurious ambience, the famous faces dining at tables, the air of success that surrounded the place. He swallowed hard. "I need to talk to you," he said, voice almost a whisper. The chef didn't answer immediately. Instead, he let the silence stretch, forcing the man to feel every second of it. Finally, he nodded toward a private booth. "Sit." The owner hesitated, then obeyed. A server poured water, and the two men sat across from each other. The tension was thick, like an unspoken war raging in the air. The owner exhaled slowly, staring at his glass. "I need your help." The chef didn't blink. He let the word settle. My restaurant is failing, the owner admitted. His voice lacked the usual arrogance. It was raw, almost desperate. Customers aren't coming. Critics are destroying us. Investors have pulled out. I've tried everything, but nothing is working. The chef leaned back, studying him. The owner swallowed hard. I made a mistake. His hands tightened into fists. I let my ego cloud my judgment. I should never have fired you. I see that now. A pause. Then he said something no one ever expected. I want you to come back. The words hung between them. For the first time, the chef saw it, the weight of regret in the man's eyes. The realization that he had destroyed something great with his own hands. But was it real? Or just another desperate attempt to save himself? The chef didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied the man across from him, watching the nervous way he shifted, the way he couldn't quite meet his gaze. Then, finally, the chef spoke. I don't need to come back, he said, his voice calm but firm. You need me to. The owner flinched. But he didn't deny it. The chef leaned forward. Tell me something, he said. If I had come to you months ago, desperate, asking for my job back, would you have listened? Silence. The owner had no answer. Because they both knew the truth. The chef let that truth sink in. Then, he stood up. I have a counteroffer, he said. The owner's head snapped up, hope flashing in his eyes. What is it? The chef's voice was smooth, powerful. I don't come back to your restaurant. He paused, letting the weight of his next words land. I own it. The owner froze. His breath hitched. I buy it, the chef continued. Every table, every plate, every worthless contract you're clinging to. And then I rebuild it the way it was meant to be. The owner's face drained of color. The chef interrupted, you can keep watching it burn. Silence. The owner's hands trembled. His once powerful empire was slipping through his fingers. He had no way out. No backup plan. And now, the man he had once thrown away was his only chance at survival. For the first time in his life, the owner was powerless. The chef held out a contract. Decide, he said simply. And then, without another word, he walked away, leaving the man alone, drowning in the weight of his own mistakes. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. And soon, the final blow would come. The restaurant was done. The owner sat in his office, staring at the cold, lifeless numbers on the financial reports. His hands trembled as he flipped through page after page. It was official. His empire had collapsed. Reservations? Gone. Investors? Pulled out. Staff? Quit. And worst of all, the customers who once worshipped his restaurant had turned against him. His biggest nightmare had come true, he was irrelevant. The death of a corrupt empire, the downfall had happened faster than he could have ever imagined. After the court's brutal ruling, the news exploded. Headlines humiliated him on every major platform, judge rules in favor of black chef, former employer found guilty of theft and exploitation. Disgraced restaurant owner ordered to pay millions in damages. From firing to fortune, the chef who took his power back. The owner watched in horror as his restaurant, once the city's crown jewel, turned into a ghost town. No customers. No staff. No hope. It was over. The chef's victory. Meanwhile, across the street, the black chef's restaurant was thriving like never before. Celebrities dined there. Major food critics gave it perfect ratings. Even international media wanted to know the story behind it. But despite all the success, the chef never gloated. He simply kept cooking, kept leading, and kept proving one thing: success is built on talent, not greed. People admired him. Not just for his food, but for his dignity. While the owner had spent years stepping on others to rise, the chef had built something real. Something that lasted. The final encounter, the owner knew he was finished. No one wanted to work with him. No one trusted him. He tried to reach out to old investors, old staff members, but no one answered. Alone, desperate, and broken, he wandered the streets. His feet carried him forward, his mind too numb to process where he was going. Until suddenly, he stopped. He was standing in front of the black chef's restaurant. He looked up. The golden lights, the warm laughter, the scent of something incredible filling the air. It was perfect. For a moment, he hesitated. Should he walk away? Should he let pride carry him somewhere else? But then, something inside him cracked. Defeated, ashamed, and stripped of everything, the former owner did something he never thought he would do. He stepped inside. A lesson too late. The restaurant was packed. Every seat was filled. The kitchen buzzed with energy. It was everything his own restaurant used to be. And then, he saw him. The black chef. Standing tall, proud, exactly where he belonged. The owner wanted to turn and run. But before he could, a waitress appeared. "Table for one?" she asked politely. His mouth felt dry. His pride screamed at him to leave. But instead, he nodded. Yes. The waitress smiled and led him to an empty table in the corner. He sat down, his hands shaking. A few moments later, a plate of food appeared in front of him. It was perfect. The same dishes that had once made his restaurant famous. Only now, they were better. He picked up his fork, hesitated for a brief moment, then took a bite. And in that instant, he knew. This was the best meal of his life. And it was made by the man he had once humiliated and discarded. He swallowed, his throat tightening. For the first time, he understood the true meaning of success. He looked up and saw the black chef watching him from across the restaurant. There was no anger in his eyes. No smugness. Only calm understanding. The owner placed his fork down and wiped his mouth. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he muttered, "I was wrong." The black chef studied him for a long moment before finally replying, "I know." And with that, the chef turned away, not out of spite, but because he had already won. There was nothing left to say. The owner sat there, looking around at the life, the joy, the warmth of the restaurant he had once tried to destroy. And for the first time in his life, he realized he had built his empire on all the wrong things. But now, it was too late to change. The restaurant had a new name now. It wasn't just a business, it was a symbol. A symbol of resilience, of redemption, of a man who refused to be broken. The chef stood by the entrance, watching as customers flowed in. Every seat was filled. A waiting list stretched weeks ahead. The same critics who once ignored him now called his restaurant the future of fine dining. But tonight, one customer wasn't here for the food. At a quiet table in the corner, an old man sat alone. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes sunken, tired. He had no reservation, no status anymore. The former restaurant owner. He didn't announce himself. He didn't demand special treatment. He simply sat there, staring at the menu, his hands trembling. The chef saw him. For a long moment, he debated whether to approach. Then, he made his decision. Walking over, he pulled out a chair and sat across from the man who had once humiliated him. The owner lifted his eyes, hesitantly meeting his gaze. "I lost everything," the man admitted. His voice was hoarse, weak. "After you left, nothing worked. The customers, the investors, they all left me behind. The chef stayed silent. The old man swallowed hard. I was wrong. Silence. Then, the chef did something no one expected. He called over a waiter and ordered a meal, for the man who once threw him away. The owner's eyes widened. Why would you? Because real success, the chef said calmly, isn't about watching others fall. The food arrived. The old man picked up his fork with shaky hands. He took a bite, just one. And then, he broke down. Tears fell freely. Not just for the food, but for the realization. For everything he had lost. The chef watched him for a moment before standing. As he walked away, he left behind only a few words. Revenge is temporary. Legacy is forever. The old man sat alone, his meal untouched, as the sound of laughter and success filled the restaurant around him. The chef never looked back. Because he had already won.